Hello and welcome to our podcast. I'm Dani, and today Crate.com talks with Devon Matthews, the head of programs of Rainbow Railroad. If you haven't heard of them yet, they are a global nonprofit organization that helps at-risk LGBTQI plus people to get safety worldwide. Before we begin, remember to press subscribe on YouTube or in your podcast app. Now, hi Devon and welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. I think it's always nice to talk with organizations that are acting globally because I believe we have such a broad perspective of what's going on all around. But first things first, how did Rainbow Railroad begin? What was the motivation behind it? What was the kickoff to it?
Yeah, absolutely. Pleasure to talk to you about Rainbow Railroad today. I've been a part of the organization for many, many years now, and I'm immensely proud of the work that we do and the LGBTQI people around the world that we support. The context of why we emerged as an organization is really in relation to the crisis of forced displacement around the world. Today, there are around 114 million forcibly displaced people who are, experiencing the impact of persecution, conflict, violence, human rights violations, and climate disasters. And queer and trans refugees are uniquely vulnerable due to state-sponsored or state responsible homophobia and transphobia. And more than 60 countries criminalize same-sex intimacy, and 14 specifically criminalizing the trans community for their gender identity and expressions. And so because of this, we're a charitable organization based in both Canada and the United States with a mission of really addressing this particular crisis. And so we help LGBTQI people who face persecution on the basis specifically of their sexual orientation, gender identity, or sex characteristics. But also these individuals are usually victims to multiple intersecting forms of persecution, things like general human rights violations, conflict zones, or climate disasters also impact the people that we work with day to day. And we were founded in 2006. So at the time when we were founded, we were entirely a volunteer-run organization, just a collection of activists who were really excited about the kind of idea of building an underground railroad of sorts for LGBTQI people, built by LGBTQI people for LGBTQI people. And so our name, Rainbow Railroad, is an homage to the Underground Railroad, but for rainbow folks. So that's kind of how we got our start.
Oh, that's amazing, actually, and to know the reason, the meaning of the name, it's really interesting. And just so we understand, have a better perspective of it, which countries do you usually work in most? Like where you see the demand in the higher amount?
Yeah, so I mean, we work in more than 40 different countries around the world, but we receive requests for help from I think like 73 different countries around the world, including the United States, increasingly with increasingly homophobic and transphobic legislation coming into play. We receive requests from all over. But principally, I would say most of our work is focused in the Caribbean, Latin America, Sub-Saharan Africa, the MENA region, and also in Russia. And so we kind of, that's the focus areas of our work, but obviously we have high volume request countries like Turkey, Iran, Afghanistan, Egypt, Jamaica, and again, Russia. So these countries with extremely limiting protections and/or actively persecutory legal structures.
Thank you for sharing it. I think it really helps us understand better this political issue, right? And I think somehow makes sense from the reality that I experience as a Brazilian, even though things are not as tough here. We see how things go around, and these waves, I believe, as you mentioned, for the United States situation right now, it's something also to consider. And then what comes to mind, Evan, it's how is the process of actually helping people out? Does it always start with people reaching out to you for help, or sometimes you were able to identify a region and act on it?
Yeah, so individuals self-refer. That's the majority of the requests that we receive through our website. It's rainbowrailroad.org/get help. And individuals can fill out our form in a number of different languages. And that form is auto generated into our secure case management system, which then an intake team reviews, verifies, and then triages. And it's worth noting that last year, we received more than 15,000 requests for help. And so as a small team with resources, but limited to the volume of kind of work we're attempting to do, we aren't able to, work with everybody that requests our help, but we really do triage to ensure that those who most need our support, and in various different ways are able to access the type of help that they need. So we make sure that different pathways and options are made available to people, and we kind of curate and work with people's unique experiences. And so that one-to-one kind of interaction that we have between our caseworkers and the individuals requesting help means that it's also expensive and time consuming, but we want to make sure that we have the best type of service that people are offered.
And with this, then another curiosity kicks in. That is, how do you navigate the differences, especially in legal differences, from place to place? Like, do you have local partners? Are you able to do some work like based on maybe international laws? How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, we have a couple of different ways of approaching it. First of all, our team is honestly some of the most amazing people I've ever worked with, the smartest, most hardworking people who really honestly absorb and attempt to learn the international and domestic legal infrastructure in almost every country that we work in, and understand how to navigate what that looks like and help to advocate for individuals through different systems. We also have regional experts on the team, so people who kind of specialize in a particular area or who are able to help advise or translate on particular concerns that relate to geographic focus. But then also, absolutely, we rely on local partnerships, especially to give us kind of up-to-date on-the-ground information about how things are going, because we all know that there's the way that things are done on paper and that there's the way that things are done in practice. And so having individuals who are situated in country and who help to not only support the cases that we work with, but also feed us information and allow us to help navigate and advocate as well is crucial. So in the countries where we have the highest volume of requests, we have some really core partnerships that are, essential to the dynamic of how we work. And these partnerships generally have a much higher responsibility within the organization and are trusted with a lot more of the dynamic of work. And then in countries where we have less requests for help, we have partners that we might, provide a little grant to help them operate or to help kind of support the work that they're doing independent of us. But it merits noting as well that Rainbow Railroad doesn't want to exist like most charitable organizations. We'd love to have the problem that we're trying to address just not no longer be a thing, and work our way out of a job. But in the interim, we really try to also bolster organizations that are working locally to prevent the type of systemic violence that we see, and to also help build the LGBTQI movement, the rights movement, the equity movement, and also just protection systems to keep people in their homes, because we know that fleeing and seeking refuge in another country should be the last resort. It should be the absolute end of the road for people, because it's a very arduous process.
I would love to hear you say this, because I think this work to change policies, to change maybe behaviors, even if you think about it in this level, it's really the key to actually getting you guys out of business, really. and I cannot imagine absolutely what is the way that you have in someone's life to need to flee your country. I mean, this displacement can be so brutal, so brutal, and be far away from everything the language the culture people then just start over. In a sense, it feels like freedom if you think about it, but in the other, it feels like this huge loss of a life, and that's there's also another point when I get curious here. Are you able to also assist people after they get out? I mean, I believe they don't just take them and throw it in another place, of course. But I mean, what is the kind of assistance that you are offering to LGBTQI people after they are displaced?
Yeah, so we really look at our particular role for the most part, with some exceptions, as really ensuring that we provide the direct service in order to like be resettled or to find a better place domestically within their home context, and then we really attempt to be the connectors. And so what we want to do when people do move is connect individuals with government services, with settlement organizations that exist to serve their needs, and or also with communities of care. So with communities of volunteers or like neighbors, basically, that can help people to settle and build their new lives. And so our work really like is to be that connecting point and to help people to bridge the gap between their old life and their new life, between what feels like very tricky with something that feels a lot lighter and new and fresh. But we also we have to be a little bit careful about how deep we go into the settlement component of work, because we really exist to be a bit of that, that international kind of like, I don't know, it's the that inner period support where we really want to kind of like hone our expertise and ensure that we are providing the best, because there are also partners around the world who are amazing settlement partners who their entire roles exist on like helping people to navigate once they have been in their country of resettlement for some time, and helping them to build their new lives. And we want to default to the expertise that those organizations bring to the work. But we certainly want to make sure we can do everything we can to help get people on the right foot.
And yes, I mean, it'd be too much to take on, I believe. And it's kind of a chain, right? The process in chain. You actually help in a bit, and then someone else gets in and helps out on the long road. Devin, before we move forward, I just want to make a quick pause here to tell people to go to your page, rainbowrailroad.org, and then they can get more information, right, about what you guys are doing. I think some stories as well, which I feel like sometimes it's important for us to understand really what goes on. Again, I don't think that from my experience in life, I can fully understand how complicated that is. So to everyone watching or listening to us right now, we're going to leave the link to their page on the description of this episode, so you can easily access that and learn more about it. We're going to talk about getting in touch with them soon, but before going there, let's talk about other challenges that you face as an organization, because I think sometimes it's complicated to talk about all the things that you do without mentioning the issues in the process, right? So what would you say that right now are the greatest challenges that you're facing?
Yeah, I think that one of the biggest challenges that we face is that individuals that we work with are, because of their sexual orientation and gender identity, face an uphill battle in not only just fleeing their home country, but also in accessing the typical services that other refugees and asylum seekers are able to access. And that really is why we exist, right? There is a set of kind of heteronormative processes that exist in the world that don't meet the needs and expectations of the people that we work with. And I think that means that we're facing this uphill battle all the time. And a practical example of that is that when we work with lesbian identified women in, let's say, Egypt, we have to navigate not only the context of the fact that there is discrimination and difficulty being a lesbian in Egypt, but also the fact that there is misogyny and kind of difficulty in the way that people are navigating as women through different processes. And we face difficulty with even having people move across borders with identification documents when individuals might be transgender and their gender identity marker on their documentation differs from the way that they look at an airport. They can easily get screened or not permitted to board the plane in some countries. And so we are constantly kind of facing not only the very real reality, like the reality of discrimination and persecution when we are helping to support people to move, but then we're also facing that in kind of the typical refugee processing dynamic. Interviewers are interviewing bisexual refugees, for example, who have an active partner that is opposite sex and questioning the reality or the validity of their sexual orientation, because to them, they're like, well, you have a husband and you're a woman, so you're not gay. We don't need to support you. And the reality of trying to write, supportive paperwork and consistently show up for people and say, listen, we are not only having to educate you on what bisexuality is, but also to try to train you on doing your job in an effective and supportive way to help people who are highly at risk and highly vulnerable. And so, this is why relocating can take weeks, months, or even years. And even in the simplest situation, individuals have to complete reams of paperwork, medical evaluations, security interviews, and visa applications. And in all of those processes is discrimination and oppression as LGBTQI people, even within the quote unquote Western system. Even for people who are navigating processes in Canada, the United States, and Europe, there is an acute reality of discrimination and a lack of awareness about the diverseness of LGBTQI identities. And then I guess the big thing that I would note is that the majority of the people that we work with are actually internally displaced. And what that means is that they actually are in the country of origin, the country that they were born in, and they haven't yet fled across an international border, but they have fled within their home country. So that means that they've either fled their home community, or they've fled from one city to another city, or they're on the run constantly because the police are chasing them or the state is chasing them in some way. And they're on the move all the time, constantly trying to find some kind of pocket of safety, or maybe they're able to be for a couple of months and then they have to move again. And this is an incredibly restrictive and difficult position to be in, because there are no international services that really serve the needs of those individuals. While internally displaced people are under the umbrella of what the UNHCR should be serving, the reality of what the UNHCR is able to do for internally displaced people is very minimal. And so what we try to do and have to do on many occasions is actually displace people internationally in order to make them eligible for massive programs or resettlement opportunities. And that's a very difficult position for people to be in. And so we're really trying to meet people where they're at and not have them flee in order to access services, because it's exceptionally dangerous. And so that's another huge issue and struggle that we work with, is trying to navigate the reality of those situations.
Again, another thing that I cannot imagine how intricate it must be to navigate all of these realities. It's amazing. But now flipping the coin and looking at the positive things, right? What is your vision, your intention for a near future Rainbow River?
Yeah, I mean, I have so many dreams and hopes for the organization and for where we're about to go. And I've never been more confident that we can get there, truly. In 2026, we'll celebrate 20 years of work, revolutionary work. I think that really is unique. And in this culture and climate that we are currently living through, in elections that are increasingly becoming restrictive and conservative in government operations, and in a landscape where we're dealing with intersecting crises intersecting issues of racism and misogyny and xenophobia and climate crisis, this work is all the more important. And we're hearing from more and more people who need our support. And so I really believe that in that context, until there is a breakthrough and rights improve, we are needed. And so we want to tackle this challenge head on, and we have the right people to do it and to build. We want to move more people to safety. We want to help queer the system and ensure that we are leaders in advocating for the inclusion and protection of forcibly displaced people at every level of the global asylum system. So meaning that we are like inserting ourselves into at every table and every intersection of what it means to work with the forcibly displaced. And we want to strengthen our foundation as an organization as well. We've grown really, really quickly. We have, expanded our staff team. We have improved our operations. We've, invested in our technological capacity and our cybersecurity and all of the different things that we need in order to do this work internationally really well. But we need to do even more. We have to get ready for the type of challenge that's ahead of us. And every, couple hundred people that we support more, we have to build and build to make sure that we can do that. So we really want to make sure that we can bring on more supporters, more donors, more staff people to kind of continue to build this movement, because we know that if we're not doing it, there's not a lot else out there that is doing the type of work that we're doing.
I from what we have seen during the research for this podcast, I say that that's a sad truth, actually. Sad truth. There's not a lot of organizations doing the work that you do, with the commitment that you guys are doing, and with the reach, I would say, that you guys are able to achieve. This is amazing. And talking about this health that you called for now, how can our listeners and people watching us right now engage with this cause and help you guys keep going?
Yeah, there's so many ways to get involved and to support, right? There are, especially, I'm not sure where the majority of your listeners are, but I think all over the world, honestly, everywhere, there's something that people can be doing. I think advocating with government around, improved immigration policies and laws, especially as it relates to LGBTQI people, is essential. There's a lot of shifts and changes going on in the European immigration system right now that make refugees and asylum seekers hugely disadvantaged. There's an election coming up in Canada and an election coming up in the United States that's bound to be really consequential as it relates to the rights and freedoms of LGBTQI people and people entering the country and trying to build new lives. So that's huge. Getting involved with us in volunteering or in kind of like supporting the work that we do is massive. And also, honestly, donating. I know every nonprofit says this, but we do our work directly because of the community of support that we have around us. The more resources we have, the more people we're able to support. It's the most simplistic fundraising message that I've ever seen in terms of my work with nonprofits. It's really like, the more we have, the more people we support. And so I think that growing that is a critical goal for us so that we can support, thousands of people over the next few years, but we need the financial backup to do that.
Thank you, Lifeline, so much for joining us today. I do hope that people reach out, and I completely agree with you. It's a simple thing to donate. It's just simple and makes such a difference if you think about it. It's what makes, like, I think I heard a guest say it's our bread and butter, right? That's it. That's it. So I do hope people get in touch with you guys. But again, thank you so much for joining. This was a great conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
And for everyone listening or watching us right now, thank you so much for staying with us for this more episode. And remember, if you liked it, press subscribe and share the message with your friends. Share this episode with your friends, with people that you think might profit from this or that might want to know more about Rainbow Railroad. This is how we spread the word and tell the algorithms, especially, that this is an important conversation, all right? Bye, and I see you in the next episode.